Hello everyone. I know many of you are listening to this while preparing for sleep. Before we begin, take a moment to notice where you are and what time it is for you right now. You don't need to type anything if you're already drifting off. And if you enjoy calm stories like this, you can gently support the channel by liking and subscribing whenever you feel comfortable. Now, let the rain fade into the background and allow the story to unfold slowly. Yet by morning, Anna Keller was gone. She was 29 years old, a quiet accountant who lived alone in a second-floor apartment above a small bakery. Her life was routine, predictable, and carefully organized. Every night she locked her door twice, set her phone on the bedside table, and texted her sister before sleeping. She never missed a night. On the evening she disappeared, she sent her usual message at 10:46 p.m. Home. Talk tomorrow. That was the last message anyone ever received from her. At 7:30 the next morning, Anna failed to show up for work. By noon, her sister grew worried and went to the apartment. The door was locked. The chain was still latched from the inside. Police were called. They had to force the door open. Inside, everything looked normal. Almost too normal. Anna's purse sat on the kitchen chair. Her phone was on the nightstand, fully charged. Her wallet, keys, and shoes were all inside. Her bed looked slept in. The bathroom sink was still damp, as if someone had washed their hands recently. There were no signs of a struggle. No broken windows. No forced entry. The chain lock was still secured. And yet, Anna was gone. Investigators immediately faced an impossible question. How does someone leave a locked apartment with the chain still fastened? They searched the entire unit inch by inch. The windows were sealed. The fire escape outside showed no disturbance. There were no hidden doors, vents, or crawl spaces. The ceiling and floors were solid concrete. Security cameras covered the hallway outside her apartment. The footage showed Anna returning home at 10:42 p.m. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and locked it behind her. That was the last time she was seen. No one entered her apartment afterward. No one left. Not even once. Police reviewed the footage repeatedly, frame by frame. Nothing was missing. Nothing glitched. The hallway remained empty all night. Her neighbors were questioned. No one heard shouting. No strange noises. No footsteps. One neighbor said she heard a faint sound around 2 a.m., like furniture shifting, but dismissed it at the time. The case baffled detectives. Anna had no history of mental illness. No signs of planning a disappearance. No financial problems. No romantic conflict. No threats. No online activity suggesting fear. Her laptop showed she had been browsing recipes shortly before bed. Then something strange surfaced. Her phone activity log showed movement at 2:17 a.m. The screen turned on, unlocked. A message draft was opened, but nothing was typed. The phone then locked again. There were no fingerprints besides Anna's. No face recognition activity. No explanation. Investigators assumed a software glitch, until they noticed something else. At 2:17 a.m., the building's motion sensor in the hallway briefly activated. But the camera recorded nothing, just a flicker, like a shadow passing too quickly to see. Weeks passed. The case made local news. Online forums speculated endlessly. Some believed Anna had staged her disappearance. Others believed someone had killed her and escaped impossibly. Then a maintenance worker came forward. He claimed that 2 weeks after Anna vanished, he had been repairing a pipe in the wall behind her apartment. While working, he heard something. A sound coming from inside the wall. 3 slow knocks. He froze, thinking someone might be trapped. He knocked back. There was a pause. Then 3 knocks returned. When he called out, the sound stopped. Police inspected the wall. Nothing was found. No hollow space, no access points, no wiring anomalies. But afterward, residents began noticing strange things. At night, faint knocking sounds echoed through the building. Sometimes from inside the walls, sometimes from the floor, sometimes directly behind their doors, always 3 slow taps. The building manager eventually sealed off Anna's apartment entirely. The door was boarded shut, utilities disconnected. Still, neighbors reported that. Around 2:17 a.m., the hallway light outside her door would flicker once, and sometimes, very faintly, a sound could be heard, like someone testing a lock from the other side. Anna Keller was declared legally dead 3 years later. No body was ever found, no suspect was ever named. The apartment remains unoccupied to this day. Residents say the air outside that door always feels colder than the rest of the hallway. And if you stand very still late at night, you might hear something soft behind the wall. A gentle scratching, followed by a whisper so quiet you can barely make it out. Every weekday at 6:10 a.m., Mark Ellison left his apartment. He wore the same gray jacket, carried the same black backpack, and walked the same route to the bus stop 3 blocks away. His neighbors could almost set their clocks by him. On the morning he disappeared, nothing was different. Security footage from his apartment building showed Mark exiting the front door at 6:11 a.m. He paused to lock it, checked his phone, and adjusted the strap of his bag. He nodded once to the camera, something he often did without realizing. Then he walked out of frame. That was the last confirmed sighting of Mark Ellison. When he didn't arrive at work by 7:30, his supervisor tried calling. No answer. By noon, his phone went straight to voicemail. By evening, his sister filed a missing person report. Police began with the basics. Mark's apartment showed no signs of disturbance. His wallet, spare keys, and laptop were still inside. His bed looked slept in. The kitchen sink held a coffee mug from that morning. Nothing suggested he planned to disappear. The security cameras outside the building were checked first. They showed Mark exiting, but they never showed him reaching the street. The camera angle covered the sidewalk clearly. People passed by. Cars drove past, but Mark never appeared again after step. Ping out of the doorway. Investigators replayed the footage dozens of times. At 6:11:42 a.m., Mark steps through the doorway. At 6:11:43 a.m., the camera briefly flickers. At 6:11:44 a.m., the sidewalk is empty. There is no footage of him walking away, no cut, no edit, no gap, just one missing second. Police assumed a technical glitch. But when they reviewed footage from neighboring buildings, the same thing appeared. One camera showed Mark stepping outside. The next camera, covering the same area from another angle, showed nothing. It was as if he had vanished in the space between frames. Search teams were brought in. Dogs traced his scent from the doorway to the sidewalk, and then stopped abruptly, confused. No trail beyond that point. His phone's last GPS ping came from outside his apartment at 6:11 a.m. After that, it went offline. Neighbors were interviewed. One woman recalled hearing footsteps stop suddenly outside her window that morning. Another said she thought she heard someone say, "Wait," very softly, then nothing. Police searched nearby alleys, rooftops, dumpsters, and construction sites. Nothing. Days turned into weeks. Then something strange happened. Mark's transit card registered a tap, 3 days after his disappearance, at 6:11 a.m., at the same bus stop he used every day. Transit officials confirmed it wasn't a glitch. The system logged a successful tap-in. The card ID matched Mark's, but the security camera at the bus stop showed no one there, just the empty sidewalk. The next day, it happened again. 6:11 a.m., same card, same location, no person. Each morning for 5 days, the tap repeated. Investigators staked out the stop on the 6th morning. At exactly 6:11 a.m., the card reader beeped. The screen flashed valid fare. But the stop was empty. Officers standing nearby felt a sudden cold draft pass between them. One later said he felt like some. One brushed past his shoulder. They reviewed the camera footage. For a fraction of a second, a faint blur appeared. Tall, human-shaped, slightly darker than the background. Then it vanished. After that morning, the tap stopped, but something else began. Mark's voicemail started receiving messages. Empty messages. Each one exactly 12 seconds long. Each recorded at 6:11 a.m. Audio analysts found faint sounds in the background, footsteps, fabric rustling, and distant traffic. On the 7th message, a whisper could be heard. Missed it again. Police tried tracing the calls. They originated from no active phone. His number had become the source. Months passed. The case went cold, but neighbors still report odd things. Sometimes just after dawn, someone hears footsteps outside the building, stopping suddenly in front of Mark's old doorway. Sometimes the motion light flicks on by itself. And sometimes, at exactly 6:11 in the morning, The air outside feels colder, heavier, as if someone is standing there waiting for something that never comes. Mark Ellison was declared legally dead 5 years later. No body, no evidence, no explanation, just a single moment in time where a man stepped outside to go to work, and never arrived anywhere at all. The security camera had never failed before. It had recorded everything for years: delivery drivers, late-night cleaners, stray cats, even storms rolling through the parking lot. It was reliable, dull, and predictable. Until the night it captured something it was never meant to. Ethan Moore worked as a night supervisor at a private storage facility on the edge of town. The job was quiet, boring, and perfect for someone who preferred solitude. He worked alone, walking the property once every hour and monitoring cameras from a small office near the front gate. On the night he disappeared, Ethan clocked in at 10:02 p.m. The camera howed him setting his coffee down, hanging his jacket, and logging into the security system. He looked tired but normal. He even waved casually at the camera, something he sometimes did out of habit. At 11:47 p.m., one of the motion alerts activated near storage row C. Ethan stood up, grabbed his flashlight, and headed outside. The camera followed him through the corridor, down the concrete path, and toward the storage units. Everything looked routine. At 11:49 p.m., he stopped in front of Unit C-17. He leaned forward, shining his flashlight at the lock. Then something strange happened. The video glitched, not fully, just a fraction of a second. A blur crossed the frame. When the picture stabilized, Ethan was no longer standing there. The camera continued recording. The flashlight lay on the ground, still switched on. The unit door was closed. The area was empty. No footsteps, no movement, no sound. Ethan never appeared again. When the morning shift arrived at 6 a.m., they found the office unlocked. Coffee still warm in the mug warmer. His phone was on the desk. His keys were hanging on the hook, but Ethan was gone. Police were called immediately. They reviewed the footage dozens of times. The moment of disappearance always occurred at the same frame. 1 second he was there. The next he wasn't. There was no cut in the footage, no dropped frames, no corrupted data. The system recorded continuously. Investigators searched the entire facility. Every storage unit was opened, every corner inspected. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no damage. The flashlight was tested. It worked fine. The lock on Unit C-17 was intact and untouched. The camera footage revealed something else unsettling. Just before Ethan vanished, the shadow behind him moved, slightly out of sync with his body. When analysts slowed the video down frame by frame, they noticed the shadow seem to stretch forward, just a fraction of a second before he disappeared. Almost like it moved first. Police checked Ethan's background. He had no known enemies, no financial trouble, no mental health issues. He was known as dependable and quiet. His phone records showed no activity after 11:48 p.m., but something else stood out. At exactly 11:49 p.m., the system logged a manual override command, one that could only be entered from inside the security office. Yet the office camera showed no one there. The command name was strange: transfer mode, active. No one at the company had ever seen that setting before. Technicians insisted the system didn't even have such a function. Over the next few days, odd things began happening at the storage facility. Cameras would briefly show movement in empty corridors. A shadow would pass where no one stood. Once, a camera caught the outline of a man standing motionless at the end of row C, facing the lens. When security checked immediately afterward, the row was empty. Audio recordings picked up faint sounds late at night, footsteps, a low hum, and occasionally what sounded like someone whispering. One recording, slowed down, revealed a voice saying, "Can you see me?" The facility was closed temporarily for investigation. During a final sweep, an officer noticed something scratched into the inside wall of Unit C-17. It hadn't been there before. The marks were faint, uneven, and deep enough to catch a fingernail. They formed 3 words: "I'm still here." The unit was sealed permanently, but the camera facing it continued to behave strangely. Every night at 11:49 p.m., the feed flickered. For less than a second, a silhouette appeared where Ethan had last stood. Not moving. Just watching. The company eventually replaced the entire security system. The old footage was archived. Still, employees who worked late claimed strange things. Continued, flashlights turning on by themselves, footsteps echoing down empty rows, and sometimes, just before midnight, a quiet voice coming through the intercom system, distorted, distant, and pleading. "Can you see me now?" Ethan Moore was declared legally dead 4 years later. No body was ever found. No explanation was ever given. Only a single camera frame remains, frozen in time, showing the moment just before a man vanished from a place designed to record everything. The voicemail arrived at 3:32 a.m. At first, no one noticed it. The phone belonged to a small-town emergency dispatch office, and overnight messages were common. Wrong numbers, pocket dials, static-filled hang-ups. But this one was different. The caller ID showed a local number, a woman's number, a number that belonged to Lena Morell. Lena had been pronounced dead 3 hours earlier. Her body had been found in her apartment at 12:11 a.m., lying on the bedroom floor. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. No signs of forced entry, no weapon recovered. And yet, at 3:32 a.m., her phone had placed a call. When the dispatcher listened to the voicemail, the room went silent. At first, there was nothing but background noise, a low hum, like an air vent. Then a faint sound of breathing, slow, unsteady. After several seconds, a whisper emerged. "Hello? I think something's wrong." The voice was unmistakably Lena's. The message continued. "I can't feel my hands." A soft scraping sound followed, as if something were being dragged across the floor. Then the whisper again, weaker now. "I don't think I'm supposed to be here." The message cut off abruptly. Police immediately treated the voicemail as evidence. They confirmed the timestamp, confirmed the originating number, confirmed the voice. There was no technical explanation. Lena's phone had been logged into evidence at 12:48 a.m., sealed in a bag, power. Ed off. It could not have made the call. Her apartment was searched again. Nothing new was found. No hidden devices, no secondary phones. Her autopsy confirmed she had died before 1 a.m., yet the voicemail existed. Investigators checked call logs from the phone company. The call had originated from a tower just 3 blocks away, the same one that normally served Lena's apartment, but her phone had not connected to it. The signal had no physical source. The case gained attention quietly. Police avoided releasing details, but word spread among staff. Then another voicemail arrived, this one at 3:32 a.m. The following night, same number, same duration. This time the voice sounded more strained. "Please. Someone answer." There was a faint tapping sound in the background. 3 taps, a pause. 3 more, then breathing, sharp, panicked. "I think I'm stuck." The dispatcher who heard it broke down in tears. Authorities brought in digital forensic experts. They examined every system involved. There was no spoofing, no hacking, no malware. The calls were real. The voice matched Lena's vocal patterns perfectly. Even her breathing rhythm matched medical recordings taken earlier in the investigation. They attempted to trace the signal live on the 3rd night. At exactly 3:32 a.m., the phone rang again. This time, officers were waiting. The call was answered immediately. There was silence at first. Then the voice spoke, clearer than before. "Can you hear me now?" An officer asked where she was. A pause. "I don't know. It's dark. It feels like my apartment. But wrong." A low, distant thud echoed through the call. "Something keeps knocking," the voice whispered. From the inside, the connection cut. That night, something strange appeared in Lena's apartment. A new mark on the wall beside her bedroom door. 3 shallow dents, side by side, like knuckles striking from the off. Sighed. The apartment had been empty since her death. Locked, sealed. No one had entered. The markings were photographed and tested, fresh, made within hours. Over the next week, the voicemails continued, always at 3:32 a.m., always from Lena's number. Her voice grew weaker each night. Sometimes she cried, sometimes she whispered names of people who had already been interviewed. Sometimes she said nothing at all, just breathing. One message stood out. "I think I remember now," she said slowly. "I didn't fall. Someone pushed me." The message ended with a sharp inhale. then silence. After that night, the calls stopped. No more voicemails, no more signals, the phone number went completely inactive. Weeks later, during renovations in the apartment building, workers opened a sealed crawl space between two units. Inside, they found something that hadn't been there before. A phone. Lena's phone. Its screen was cracked, its battery completely dead. On the back, scratched deeply into the casing, were 3 words: "I tried calling. The case was never reopened." Officially, Lena's death remains unsolved. The voicemails were labeled unexplained digital artifacts, but dispatchers still talk about it quietly. They say that sometimes when the building is silent and the phones are idle, a line will light up without ringing. And for a split second, the system displays a familiar name: Lena Morell. Then it disappears, and somewhere in the static, a faint whisper can still be heard. "Can you hear me now?" The car was parked perfectly. Too perfectly. It sat in the far corner of a grocery store parking lot, neatly centered between the faded white lines. The engine was cold. The doors were locked. The headlights were off. Nothing looked wrong, except that it had been sitting there for 3 days. The vehicle belonged to Daniel Price, a 34-year-old warehouse supervisor who had been reported missing by his sister after he failed to show up for work or answer his phone. Daniel was reliable, quiet, and predictable. He didn't disappear without telling someone. When police ran the plate and confirmed the car was his, they expected to find clues inside. They found none. The interior was spotless. No signs of a struggle, no blood, no damage. His wallet was in the center console. His phone was not inside. Neither were his keys. The driver's seat was adjusted just the way Daniel liked it, slightly reclined, pushed back. But something strange stood out. The seatbelt was buckled. No one buckles a seatbelt before getting out of a car. Surveillance footage from the grocery store parking lot showed Daniel arriving at 9:41 p.m. 3 nights earlier. He parked slowly, adjusted the car once, then sat still for nearly a full minute. Then, without opening the door, without unbuckling, without any visible movement, he was gone. One frame showed him sitting there. The next frame showed an empty driver's seat. The seatbelt remained fastened. Police replayed the footage again and again. There was no glitch, no skipped time, no shadow crossing the lens. Daniel simply vanished between frames. Search teams scoured the surrounding area. Dogs tracked his scent from the car door to the asphalt, and then stopped. As if he had never stepped out. His phone was traced next. The final ping came from the same parking lot at exactly 9:41 p.m. After that, the device went dark. No calls, no messages, no movement. But 3 days later, Daniel's sister received a text. It came from his number. The message read, "Did I miss something?" She froze. She tried calling. It went straight to voicemail. Minutes later, another text arrived. "I can't find my way out." Police were contacted immediately. They pulled phone records, expecting spoofing or hacking. But the carrier confirmed the message. Were sent from Daniel's actual device. The problem was, the device had not reconnected to any network. It showed no GPS data, no tower pings. It technically didn't exist anywhere. Over the next week, more messages came, always late at night, always short. "Everything looks the same. I hear cars but can't see them. Why won't the door open?" Investigators began to wonder if Daniel had suffered a psychological break and was hiding somewhere, but extensive searches turned up nothing. Then something unsettling happened. A patrol officer checking the grocery store lot at night reported seeing a man sitting in the driver's seat of Daniel's car. When he approached, the interior was empty, but the seatbelt was still buckled. That same night, surveillance captured something new. At exactly 9:41 p.m., a faint shape appeared inside the car. Not fully solid, not fully transparent. It looked like a person sitting very still. The shape lasted less than 2 seconds before fading away. Audio from the camera picked up a faint clicking sound, like a seatbelt locking. Police sealed off the car and had it towed to an evidence facility. Inside, forensic teams found something new etched lightly into the inside of the windshield, barely visible unless viewed at an angle. 5 words, scratched with what looked like a fingernail. "I never opened the door." After that discovery, the messages stopped. The phone never activated again. The car was eventually released to Daniel's family. though they refused to take it. It was sold at auction. The buyer later reported something disturbing. Sometimes when driving late at night, the seatbelt on the driver's side would click shut on its own, and the dashboard clock would reset to 9:41 p.m. Daniel Price was declared legally dead 2 years later. No remains were ever found. No explanation was ever proven. Only a parked car, a buckled seatbelt, a moment in time where a man vanished without ever opening the door. The smart home system activated at 1:58 a.m. No one was supposed to be inside. The house belonged to Aaron Whitmore, a 41-year-old software consultant who lived alone on the outskirts of town. He had left earlier that evening to stay with a friend after complaining about strange noises coming from inside his walls. At least, that's what he told his sister during their last phone call. At 9:42 p.m., Aaron's car was seen leaving the driveway. At 1:58 a.m., the house woke up. The security system recorded motion in the living room. Lights turned on automatically. The thermostat adjusted itself. The smart speaker activated, waiting for a command, but no one was there. The system logs showed movement moving slowly from room to room, living room, hallway, kitchen, bedroom, as if someone were walking through the house. Then, at 2:03 a.m., the system began recording audio. What it captured would later disturb everyone who heard it. At first there was silence, then the faint sound of breathing, heavy, uneven. A soft dragging noise followed, like fabric brushing across the floor. Suddenly a voice whispered, "Why won't it stop watching me?" The voice matched Aaron's. At 2:05 a.m., the living room camera turned on by itself. The footage showed an empty room, lights on, curtains still, furniture untouched, but the audio continued. A strained whisper, "I told it to stop," then a sharp sound, like something striking wood. The recording cut off. When police arrived later that morning, they found the front door locked. No broken windows, no forced entry. Inside, the house looked undisturbed, but unsettling details emerged. The smart display in the hallway had been shattered. The bedroom mirror was cracked from the inside, spiderwebbed as if something had struck it from close range. On the bathroom wall, writ N in what looked like dried condensation, were 4 words. "IT can see me." There were no fingerprints, no blood, no sign of Aaron. His phone was found on the kitchen counter, powered off, yet his smartwatch told a different story. Its health log showed elevated heart rate readings between 1:55 and 2:06 a.m. At 2:06 a.m., the data flatlined. Not like a death. Like the signal had simply ended. Police reviewed Aaron's recent messages and found something troubling. Over the past 2 weeks, he had complained repeatedly about his smart devices behaving strangely, lights turning on by themselves, the speaker responding when no one spoke, the camera activating without commands. He had joked to a friend, "Feels like the house is watching me back." Another message sent the night before his disappearance read, "If I don't answer tomorrow, check the system logs." Investigators contacted the tech company that manufactured the smart system. Engineers insisted there was no way the system could activate without user input or scheduled automation. But when they reviewed the internal logs, they found something abnormal. A user profile labeled Admin 0. It did not belong to Aaron. It had no creation date, and it had full control. Every command issued during the incident came from that profile. When engineers tried to access it, the account vanished from the system. Later that night, a technician reviewing archived footage noticed something chilling. During the 2:03 a.m. recording for exactly 1 frame, a reflection appeared in the dark television screen. A human shape, standing behind the camera. Not Aaron. Taller. Unmoving. Watching. After the investigation stalled, the house was sealed. Power disconnected. Network disabled. Still, neighbors reported strange things. Lights flickering inside. Soft humming at night. A voice faintly repeating through the walls. "Stop looking at me." 1 year later, the property was scheduled for demolition. Before demolition began, a final inspection was done. Inside the master bedroom closet, inspectors found a message carved into the wood paneling, deep and frantic. "IT learned me." Beneath it, scratched smaller, "I can't turn IT off." The demolition crew refused to continue after that. The house still stands, boarded up and silent, yet sometimes nearby residents report their smart devices activating on their own, lights blinking, screens waking, speakers hissing softly. And if you listen closely during the early hours before dawn, some swear they hear a familiar voice whisper through their speakers. "Are you watching me too?" The first call came in at 2:37 a.m. Dispatch assumed it was a mistake, a pocket dial or a frightened guest who hung up. The call came from a roadside motel just off the highway, a place officers knew well for noise complaints and late-night arguments. But when they tried calling back, no one answered. 10 minutes later, the same number called again. This time, the dispatcher heard breathing, slow, shallow, uneven. She asked if anyone needed help. There was a pause, then a whisper, "Please, don't hang up." Before she could respond, a line went dead. Officers were sent to the motel immediately. The call came from room 23. When they arrived, the motel manager unlocked the door. The room was empty. The bed was neatly made. The lights were off. No luggage, no personal items. No signs of anyone staying there. The phone sat on the nightstand, disconnected. The cord wasn't even plugged into the wall. The officers assumed a prank, filed a report, and left. At 2:37 a.m. the next night, the dispatcher's phone rang again. Same number, same room. This time the caller whispered something different. "I can hear you walking." Dispatch froze. Officers were standing at the station, not at the motel. The call ended with a faint clicking sound, like fingernails tapping plastic. Police returned to the motel and searched room 23 again. Still empty, still clean, still unplugged, but something new had appeared. On the bathroom mirror, fogged as if someone had just showered, were words traced with a finger. "Don't leave me here." The motel manager swore no one had entered the room since the last visit. Surveillance footage showed no one approaching or leaving room 23. The hallway camera showed an empty corridor the entire night. Despite this, the calls continued. Every night, 2:37 a.m., sometimes the caller cried. Sometimes they whispered names. Sometimes they just breathed. Audio experts analyzed the recordings and confirmed the voice belonged to a young woman, likely in her 20s. Police searched missing persons records and found a match. Her name was Emily Carter. She had vanished 2 years earlier after checking into that same motel. Her car was found abandoned at a nearby gas station. Her phone was never recovered. No body was ever found. The case had gone cold, until the calls began. Officers reopened the investigation and searched room 23 more aggressively. Behind the headboard, they found faint scratch marks, deep, uneven gouges in the wall. Inside the wall cavity, they discovered strands of hair and fragments of torn fabric. DNA testing confirmed the hair belonged to Emily Carter. The room was immediately sealed, but the calls did not stop. Now they came from different numbers, all still traced back to room 23. One night, dispatch answered and heard a new sound. A soft knocking, 3 slow taps, then a voice, barely audible. "They said I could leave if I stayed quiet." The dispatcher asked who they were. There was a long pause, then the voice whispered, "I think they forgot me." After that, the calls became less frequent, weaker, fainter, until one final call came through. 2:37 a.m. The voice sounded distant, echoing, like it was underwater. "I can't feel the walls anymore." A pause, then, "Please remember me." The line went silent. The motel closed shortly after. Room 23 was permanently boarded up. The phone line was cut. The number disconnected. Years later, the building was demolished. But dispatch records still show something strange. Every year, on the same date Emily Carter disappeared, at exactly 2:37 a.m., a call attempts to come through. It never connects. The system logs it as call received, source unknown. Dispatchers who work overnight say that when the phone rings at that time, even without a call, the air grows cold. And if they listen closely, they swear they can hear someone whisper through the static, "Are you still there?" The stairwell wasn't supposed to be special. It sat at the far end of an aging apartment complex, tucked behind a fire door most residents rarely used. The building had elevators, and the stairwell was mostly forgotten, dimly lit, narrow, and echoing. But over the years, people began to avoid it, because once in a while someone would go in and never come back out. The first disappearance happened quietly. A college student named Marcus Lee lived on the 4th floor. One evening, his roommate watched him leave their apartment to take out the trash. Instead of using the elevator, Marcus said he'd take the stairs to get some air. Security cameras showed him opening the stairwell door. They never showed him exiting. His trash bag was later found on the 3rd floor landing. Marcus was never seen again. At first, police assumed he had left the building through another exit, but the stairwell only connected vertically. No side doors, no maintenance tunnels, no exterior access. Every floor had one heavy fire door leading back into the building. None were opened after Marcus entered. The case went cold. Then, 3 months later, it happened again. A delivery driver named Luis entered the same stairwell while carrying a package. Cameras caught him stepping inside, adjusting his grip, and glancing upward. Then nothing. The stairwell cameras froze for half a second, just long enough for his body to vanish between frames. His cart was found tipped over on the landing. The package remained. Luis was never located. Management shut the stairwell down after that. Locked doors, warning signs, access restricted, but strange reports continued. Residents claimed to hear footsteps echoing inside at night. Slow steps, upward, never coming back down. Some said they heard whispering through the door. Not words, just breath. Maintenance workers refused to enter after one of them swore he saw movement in the corner of his eye, even though the lights were on and the stairwell was empty. Police reopened the investigation when a third disappearance occurred. This time, it was caught on video in chilling detail. A woman named Rebecca Holt entered the stairwell at 11:42 p.m. after returning from work. She hesitated before stepping inside, as if she felt something was wrong. Then she went in. The camera followed her for 2 steps. Then the image distorted. When it cleared, the stairwell was empty. No Rebecca, no sound, no movement. Her phone, however, remained active. At 11:44 p.m., it sent a location ping from inside the stairwell. At 11:45 p.m., it sent another, same location, over and over again, always from the same vertical point, between the 3rd and 4th floors. Police searched the stairwell top to bottom. They measured walls, tapped concrete, used thermal cameras. Nothing. But while investigators stood inside, one officer reported feeling pressure, like air moving downward even though no airflow existed. Another officer heard footsteps above them. There was no upper floor. Later that night, Rebecca's phone rang. An officer answered. At first, there was only breathing, then a whisper, "I can't find the door." The officer asked where she was. There was a pause. "I keep walking," the voice said, "but it never ends." The call dropped. After that, the phone continued sending short voice messages, always late at night. They grew quieter with time. Sometimes all that could be heard was walking, sometimes crying. Once, very faintly, "There are others here." The stairwell was sealed with concrete after the third disappearance. Both entrances were bricked shut. Warning signs were posted. The building eventually lost tenants and was scheduled for demolition. Before demolition, investigators scanned the stairwell one final time. Ground-penetrating radar showed something impossible. A hollow vertical space inside the concrete, far deeper than the building's structure allowed, like a shaft that went down far beyond the foundation. No construction records explained it. When drilling began, workers stopped almost immediately. From inside the drill hole came a sound, footsteps, slow, ascending. The project was halted permanently. The building still stands abandoned. At night, nearby residents sometimes report hearing footsteps echoing upward, even though the stairwell no longer has an entrance. And on rare occasions, security cameras facing the sealed wall catch something strange, a shadow moving upward, step by step, never reaching the top. The camera was installed for one simple reason: theft. A small printing warehouse on the edge of town had been losing equipment, and management wanted proof, so they added a single high-resolution security camera facing the loading bay. It recorded 24 hours a day, uploading footage directly to a secure server. For the first 3 weeks, nothing happened. Then one night, the camera recorded something it wasn't designed to see. At 1:13 a.m., motion detection activated. The loading bay was empty. The lights were off. The doors were locked, no vehicles were present, yet the system clearly detected movement. When the footage was reviewed, investigators saw a shadow slide across the concrete floor. Not a reflection, not a lighting change, a shadow, long, narrow, and human-shaped, moving as if cast by something walking just outside the frame, except there was nothing there to cast it. The shadow moved slowly, stopping near the center of the loading bay. It lingered for several seconds, then drifted out of view. No person ever appeared. At first, staff dismissed it as a glitch, until the next night, at 1:13 a.m., exactly, the motion sensor activated again. This time, the shadow appeared closer to the camera, more defined. Its outline suggested shoulders, a head, arms hanging at its sides. It didn't move like a reflection. It moved with intent. At one point it seemed to tilt, as if looking up toward the camera. Then it faded. The warehouse manager contacted security technicians. They checked wiring, lighting, lens flare, insects, even dust. Nothing explained it. The camera was functioning perfectly. On the third night, audio was enabled. At 1:13 a.m. the shadow returned, and this time sound came with it. A faint shuffling noise, then a soft exhale, not mechanical, not wind, breathing. The audio level rose suddenly, as if the source had moved closer to the microphone. Then a whisper emerged, low, broken, almost hesitant. "Can you see me now?" The recording cut off. Police were notified. They searched the warehouse and surrounding property. Nothing was found, but when officers reviewed the footage frame by frame, something disturbing appeared. The shadow did not match any human proportions. Its head was slightly too long. Its shoulders sloped unnaturally. Its shadow did not connect to any visible feet. Over the next week, the activity intensified. Every night at exactly 1:13 a.m., the shadow appeared. Each time it came closer to the camera. Each time the breathing grew louder. Sometimes, faint scraping sounds followed, like fingertips dragging lightly over concrete. On the sixth night, words appeared, scratched into the dust on the warehouse floor beneath the camera, visible only when sunlight hit at the right angle. "I was here first." No one had entered the building. The doors remained sealed. Alarm logs showed no breaches. Then something worse happened. The camera feed briefly switched angles on its own. Instead of showing the loading bay, it showed a narrow hallway that did not exist in the building. The walls were close, the lighting dim, the floor uneven. At the end of the hallway stood a dark figure. It wasn't a shadow anymore. It had depth, shape, form. It stood motionless facing the camera. Then it lifted its head. Where a face should have been, there was only darkness. The audio captured a slow inhale. Then a whisper. "You were watching me." The feed cut to black. Technicians attempted to delete the footage. The file resisted deletion, reappearing each time under a different timestamp. Eventually, the entire server crashed. When it rebooted, the footage was gone, except for one final clip saved automatically in a backup folder. The last frame showed the loading bay again, empty, but on the concrete floor, directly beneath the camera, were fresh markings. Footprints, bare, human-shaped, leading directly toward the camera, and stopping inches from the lens. The warehouse was shut down shortly after. The camera was removed and destroyed. But months later, a nearby business installed a new system. On its first night of operation, at 1:13 a.m., motion detection activated. The footage showed a familiar shape. Sliding into frame, a shadow, long, watching, and somewhere in the background, barely audible beneath the static, a voice whispered, "You're still looking." The message appeared at 2:46 a.m. It wasn't a text. It wasn't an email. It arrived as a system notification on a phone that had been powered off for almost 2 years. The phone belonged to Natalie Cross, a 27-year-old graduate student who vanished on her walk home from the library one winter night. Her disappearance had devastated her family and baffled police. There were no witnesses, no surveillance footage, no signs of violence. Her phone had last pinged near the campus gate before going silent forever, until it turned itself back on. The phone was locked inside an evidence bag at the police station, stored in a sealed drawer. When the night shift technician heard the alert sound echo through the room, he thought he imagined it. Then it happened again. A soft notification chime. He walked over and saw the screen glowing faintly inside the sealed bag. A new message notification pulsed on the display. Sender, unknown. Time, 2:46 a.m. Message, I think I made a mistake. The technician immediately called his supervisor. When they removed the phone from evidence storage, the battery indicator read 0%. It should not have powered on. They unlocked the screen. There was no signal, no Wi-Fi, no SIM activity. Yet the message was there. They attempted to trace its source. The metadata showed no sender address, no routing path, no server log. The only information available was a location tag, coordinates pointing to the exact place Natalie was last seen alive. Police reopened the case. That same night, another message arrived. 2:46 a.m. It's cold here. Then another, 1 minute later, I can hear cars but I can't see them. Officers were dispatched to the location, a quiet stretch of sidewalk near campus. Nothing was out of place. No one was there. But when one officer stood still, he felt something strange, like a sudden pressure shift, as if the air had thickened. The phone vibrated again. You're standing where I stopped. The officer stepped back instinctively. The temperature dropped. His breath fogged. The messages continued over the next several nights, always at 2:46 a.m. Always brief, always unsettling. I didn't mean to stop. I just wanted to rest. Something grabbed my shadow. I can't step forward. Investigators brought in digital forensic experts. They confirmed the messages were not being sent through any known network. The phone behaved as if receiving signals from nowhere. Worse, audio began attaching itself to the messages. Short clips, static-heavy, distorted, but unmistakably Natalie's voice, weak, confused, sometimes crying. One recording contained soft footsteps, but they didn't sound like they were moving on pavement. They sounded hollow, echoing, as if inside a long, narrow space. A week later, security cameras near the sidewalk recorded something new. At exactly 2:46 a.m., a faint distortion appeared on the footage. A human-shaped blur stood motionless for 2 seconds, then vanished. The same night, Natalie's phone displayed another message, I can see you watching now. Police attempted one final experiment. They placed the phone back at the exact spot where Natalie had last been seen. At 2:46 a.m., it vibrated violently. The screen lit up with a final message, please don't leave me here. The air around the phone dropped several degrees. Officers reported hearing a faint voice whispering nearby, not from the phone, but from the space around them. One officer later said it sounded like someone speaking through water. The device suddenly powered off, permanently. No matter how many times technicians tried to restart it, it never responded again. After that night, the messages stopped. The case was officially closed once more. But students walking past that stretch of sidewalk still report strange experiences. Phones losing signal. GPS freezing. A sudden coldness in the air. And sometimes very faintly, a voice whispering behind them, wait. Don't go yet. Natalie Cross was never found. No body, no evidence. Only a phone that spoke after it should have been silent forever. Room 417 was clean. Too clean. When the hotel reopened after renovations, every room was booked within days, except one. Guests avoided room 417 without knowing why. Staff avoided it because something about it felt wrong. It wasn't haunted in the dramatic sense. No screams, no shadows, no cold gusts, just silence. And a rule no one remembered making, do not assign room 417. The rule began after the disappearance of a traveling salesman named Arthur Bell. Arthur checked in on a rainy Tuesday evening. He was 46, polite, quiet, and carrying a single suitcase. The front desk clerk remembered him clearly because he asked an odd question before taking the key. Does this room lock automatically? She said yes. He nodded, relieved. Security footage showed Arthur entering room 417 at 9:14 p.m. He never left. At 10:02 p.m., the hallway camera captured the door to 417 closing slowly. No one was visible. The handle simply turned. Then the latch clicked. At 10:15 p.m., the hotel received a call from inside the room. The front desk answered. There was silence, then faint breathing. The clerk. Kay asked if everything was okay. A man whispered, "It won't open." The call disconnected. Staff assumed Arthur was confused about the door mechanism. Maintenance went up 10 minutes later. Room 417 did not respond to knocks. The keycard worked, but the door would not open. It wasn't locked. It just wouldn't move. Maintenance tried again, harder this time. Nothing. The door felt solid, like pushing against a wall. They called security. While waiting, the phone at the front desk rang again. Caller ID, room 417. This time the voice was clearer. "I'm still inside," Arthur said. "The room is smaller." The line crackled. "Please hurry." Security arrived with tools. They tried forcing the door. It didn't budge. The hinges didn't shift. The frame didn't flex. It was as if the doorway had fused into the wall. Then the call stopped. At 11:03 p.m., all activity from room 417 ceased. The next morning, engineers were brought in. They cut through the drywall beside the door. Behind it was solid concrete. No hollow space, no cavity, no room. According to the building's original blueprints, room 417 had existed, but revised blueprints from later renovations showed something different. The room had been quietly removed from the layout years earlier. No explanation, no permit, no record of why. Only a blank space labeled structural. When workers finally broke through deeper layers of concrete, they found something that should not have been there. A light switch, still warm. They followed the wiring. It led nowhere. No room, no interior, just a sealed pocket inside the building. Empty, except for one thing. Scratched faintly into the concrete wall were words written over and over in uneven lines. "It's getting smaller." Arthur Bell was never found. His suitcase was never recovered. His phone was never located. His bank accounts were untouched. The hotel quietly closed the floor. Rue. M417 was removed from maps, booking software, and signage. But the problem didn't stop. Staff began reporting strange things late at night. Elevators would pause between floors near the 4th level. Guests would complain of knocking sounds coming from inside the walls. Housekeepers sometimes heard muffled voices when passing the sealed section. Soft, panicked, impossible to understand. One night, a night manager heard the front desk phone ring. Caller ID read, 417, he answered. There was a pause. Then a voice whispered, faint and strained. "It's very dark now." The call ended. The hotel disconnected the internal phone line to that floor. After that, the call stopped, but the building still behaves strangely. Sensors near the sealed area occasionally activate. Temperature drops without explanation, and maintenance workers swear that if you press your ear against the wall late at night, you can hear something faint, a slow, desperate knocking. Not asking to be let in, but trying to get out. The first sound was a knock, not loud, not urgent, just 3 slow taps coming from inside the wall. At first, everyone thought it was pipes. The apartment building on Rowan Street was old, nearly 70 years, and the walls had a habit of creaking at night. But this was different. The sound always came at the same time. 2:11 a.m., 3 taps, pause, 3 taps again. It started in apartment 3B, where a young couple, Marcus and Elena, had recently moved in. The first week, they ignored it. By the second week, it was impossible to ignore. The knocking was too deliberate, too rhythmic, too close. One night, Marcus knocked back as a joke. 3 taps. There was a pause. Then 3 taps answered. From inside the wall, they froze. Elena laughed nervously and said it must be someone upstairs. But the sound didn't come from above. It came from directly beside their bed. The next morning, Marcus checked the building plans online. According to the layout, the wall beside their bedroom backed onto nothing. There was no neighboring apartment, just a thick structural wall. That night, the knocking returned. 2:11 a.m., 3 taps. This time, a faint sound followed, like someone shifting their weight, breathing, slow and uneven. Elena pressed her ear to the wall and whispered, "Hello?" Silence. Then a faint whisper came back. "Help me." They called the building manager the next morning. He went pale when they described the sound. He told them the building had once been renovated after a serious incident, but refused to say more. He only said, "That wall shouldn't be hollow." The couple insisted on an inspection. Maintenance drilled a small hole into the wall. Cold air rushed out. The flashlight beam revealed something impossible. Another wall, just inches away, covered in scratches. Long, uneven gouges layered on top of each other, and words carved deeply into the concrete. "I'm still here." The hole was sealed immediately. Management told them to forget what they saw. But that night the knocking returned, louder than ever. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps. Then a voice, clearer now. "Why won't anyone open it?" Elena began recording the sounds on her phone. At 2:11 a.m., the recording captured more than knocking. It captured crying. A man's voice, hoarse and broken, whispering fragments. "I didn't mean to. It's too tight. Please." Police were called. They searched the building records and uncovered something disturbing. 23 years earlier, a tenant named Daniel Rowe had gone missing from that same apartment. He had complained repeatedly about noises in the walls and about rooms that weren't on the plans. During a renovation shortly after his disappearance, a contractor reported finding a narrow service cavity that had been sealed off IM properly. The report said it was corrected. No further details. Police returned with ground-penetrating radar. The scan showed a narrow void behind the wall, long, vertical, and just wide enough for a person to stand, but it wasn't connected to any entrance. They drilled again, larger this time. Behind the wall was a cramped space, barely 2 feet wide. Inside were old wires, dust, and something else, scratches, hundreds of them. Some deep, some shallow, some overlapping. And on the far side, barely visible, a message scratched repeatedly in different sizes. "He sealed me in." No remains were found. No bones, no clothing, just the markings. The building was evacuated temporarily. Investigators couldn't explain where a person could have gone if trapped inside. The cavity was resealed. But the knocking didn't stop. It moved. Sometimes coming from higher floors, sometimes lower, always at 2:11 a.m. Residents reported whispers coming from electrical outlets, voices through the vents, a soft tapping inside walls where no hollow space should exist. Then one night, Elena received a message on her phone. An unknown number, no profile, just text. "I'm cold." Seconds later, another message. "Did you hear me knocking?" Police traced the signal. It came from inside the building, specifically from the wall behind her bedroom. After that night, Elena and Marcus moved out. The apartment remains empty to this day. The building still stands, but no one stays long on that floor. Maintenance reports still log unexplained sounds. And sometimes when the building is quiet, the cameras pick up something strange, a faint vibration in the wall. 3 slow taps. Pause. 3 taps. As if someone is still trying to get out. The hallway camera had never moved before, not once in 3 years. It was bolted into the ceiling of a quiet office building that shut down every night at exactly 9 p.m. Motion sensors armed. Doors locked automatically. No one stayed late. Until the night the camera turned. At 1:44 a.m., the footage showed the lens slowly shifting to the left. Not glitching, not cutting, turning, as if someone had physically adjusted it. The movement was slow, deliberate. When it stopped, the camera was no longer facing the hallway. It was aimed directly at door 312. That door hadn't been used in years. Room 312 had once been a records office, sealed after water damage. The handle had been removed. The lock filled with epoxy. It was not possible to open it. Yet at 1:45 a.m., the handle turned. There was no hand. The door opened inward by a few inches. Darkness filled the gap. No light spilled out. No shadow crossed the threshold. The door stayed open for 13 seconds. Then it closed on its own. The camera slowly rotated back to its original position. Security noticed the footage the next morning. They assumed it was a malfunction until they reviewed the building access logs. No badge swipes, no alarms, no motion alerts. Yet the door had moved. They checked the hallway in person. Door 312 was sealed exactly as before. No marks, no damage, but something new had appeared on the wall beside it. 3 faint scratch lines, vertical, uneven, like fingernails. That night, the building manager stayed late to observe. At 1:44 a.m., the hallway lights flickered. The air temperature dropped suddenly. Then came a sound, not loud but clear, a slow breath. The camera feed began to distort, the lens tilted again. The door creaked, this time it opened wider. A smell drifted out, damp, metallic, old. The manager whispered, "Hello?" The word echoed strangely, stretched and hollow. Then something answered, a voice, low and exhausted. "Please don't shut it again." The manager ran. Police were called. They sealed off the floor and brought in structural engine. When they drilled into the wall behind room 312, they found something impossible. A narrow compartment, no more than 3 feet wide, extending upward and downward beyond the floor plans. Inside were old cables, dust, and deep gouges, hundreds of scratch marks, some overlapping, some fresh. On one section of concrete, a message had been carved over and over in different handwriting sizes. "IT closes by itself." Records revealed that decades earlier, a night janitor named Harold Vance had vanished while working in the building. His final complaint to management stated, "There's a door that won't stay open." The complaint was dismissed. No investigation followed. After his disappearance, the floor was renovated. Room 312 was sealed, the case forgotten, until the camera moved. After police involvement, the building was evacuated. The door was welded shut, the camera removed. The hallway lights disconnected. But the reports didn't stop. A neighboring business began recording strange sounds through the shared wall. Soft knocking, slow breathing, a faint voice repeating the same phrase, "It keeps closing." Late one night, a security guard heard movement and turned his flashlight toward the wall. For just a moment, a shape appeared beneath the paint, like a human outline pressing outward. Then it was gone. The building was condemned shortly afterward. Before demolition, one final inspection was done. Behind the sealed door, they found something new, fresh scratches, and beneath them, written clearly, "You opened IT, don't leave me here." The building was demolished weeks later, but people who walk past the empty lot still report something strange. At exactly 1:44 a.m., the air grows heavy. A soft click echoes, and somewhere in the dark, a door can be heard slowly opening. The first call came at exactly 12:07 a.m. It rang once at the emergency dispatch center before D. is connecting. No voice, no background noise, just a brief connection and silence. Dispatch logged it as an accidental dial. 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. Same number. This time, someone stayed on the line. The dispatcher heard breathing, slow, uneven, and close to the receiver. "Hello?" she said. A pause, then a quiet voice replied, barely louder than a whisper. "Can you hear me?" The dispatcher asked if the caller needed help. The voice hesitated. "I think I'm not supposed to be calling." The line went dead. The number traced back to a residential landline registered to a woman named Margaret Hale, age 63. But Margaret had died 3 weeks earlier. She had been found in her living room, seated in her favorite chair, television still on. No signs of struggle, no forced entry. The coroner ruled it natural causes. Her phone line had been disconnected the same day her body was discovered. Yet the call had come through. The dispatcher flagged it immediately. At 12:07 a.m. the following night, the phone rang again, same number. This time the voice sounded weaker. "I don't think I left," it said. The dispatcher's hands shook as she asked where the caller was. There was a long pause, then a soft reply. "I'm still here. But it's different now." Audio technicians later confirmed. The voice matched Margaret Hale's recordings perfectly. The calls continued every night at 12:07 a.m., each one slightly longer, each one more unsettling. Sometimes the voice cried softly, sometimes it whispered fragments. "It's dark where I am. I hear the house breathing. I can't find the door." Police went to Margaret's house again. It had been sealed since her death. The utilities were off, the rooms were undisturbed. Yet when officers stood in the living room, one of them felt a sudden chill near the armchair. A faint smell of old perfume lingered. They searched the house thoroughly. Nothing. But that night, dispatch received another call. This time the voice sounded closer, louder. "I think you're standing near me." The dispatcher froze. The caller whispered, "You're too far left." Officers on scene reported a sudden cold spot behind the chair. One officer said he felt a light pressure brush against his sleeve. The call ended. Investigators brought in phone technicians. The line had no power, no active service, no physical connection to the network, yet the calls kept coming, always at 12:07. Each night, the voice weakened. Each night, the messages grew more fragmented. "I can't feel my hands. The room is getting smaller. It's so quiet now." One night, a new sound appeared on the recording. A faint knocking, rhythmic and hollow. 3 slow taps, then silence. Dispatch traced the signal again. This time, the system returned something impossible. The call origin was not tied to a number, it was tied to a location. Margaret Hale's living room, specifically the spot where her chair had been. Police returned again. They stood in silence at 12:06 a.m. At 12:07, the air grew cold. The phone at dispatch rang. The voice came through, barely audible. "I don't think I'm supposed to be here anymore." Then, very softly, "Can you see me?" At that exact moment, one officer gasped. A faint indentation appeared in the carpet, as if someone were sitting down. The indentation deepened slightly, then stopped. The call ended. No more calls ever came after that night. The phone number went completely inactive. But strange things continued. Neighbors reported hearing soft tapping sounds through the walls late at night, sometimes a whisper, sometimes a sigh. The house was eventually sold. The new owners renovated the living room. When they removed the carpet, they found something unsettling beneath it, a faint, permanent depression in the floorboards, perfectly shaped like someone sitting, and carved faintly into the wood beneath, barely visible unless the light hit it just right, were 5 words. "I answered when you called." To this day, dispatchers swear that once in a while, usually just after midnight, the phone system flickers, and for a split second, a familiar name appears on the screen. Margaret Hale, then it vanishes. The elevator in Tower C was old, slow, and loud, but it worked, until the night it didn't. The building was a residential high-rise with 12 floors and a reputation for strange noises, flickering lights, and elevators that sometimes stopped between levels. Still, people used it every day. On November 3rd at 11:58 p.m., security cameras recorded Daniel Reeves, a 32-year-old graphic designer, entering the lobby alone. He looked tired, carrying a backpack over one shoulder, phone in his hand. He pressed the button for the 9th floor. The elevator doors closed. That was the last time anyone saw him. The security footage showed the elevator rising normally. Floor numbers lit up in sequence, 2, 3, 4. Then something strange happened. At floor 6, the display flickered. The number vanished for half a second. When it came back, it showed 0. The building had no floor 0. The elevator stopped. The doors did not open. Inside the elevator, the camera continued recording. Daniel looked confused. He pressed the buttons again. Nothing happened. The lights dimmed slightly. Then the speaker crackled. A soft tone played, not the normal chime, followed by a low, distorted voice. "Please remain inside." Daniel laughed nervously at first, assuming it was a malfunction. But then the voice spoke again. "Do not exit." He pressed the emergency button. No response. The floor indicator began changing on its own. 0, 1, 2, numbers the building did not have. Daniel stepped back, panic spreading across his face. The elevator jolted slightly, then stopped. The doors began to open, but what appeared beyond them was not a hallway. It was dark, completely black, no walls, no lights, just empty space. Daniel shouted, and pressed the close button repeatedly. The doors hesitated, then slowly began to close again. Just before they did, something moved in the darkness, a shape, tall, thin, standing far too close to the opening. The camera glitched violently. When the feed stabilized, the doors were closed. Daniel was still inside, breathing fast, shaking. He backed into the corner, eyes fixed on the doors. Then, without warning, the lights went out. The camera switched to infrared. In the dim view, Daniel was no longer alone. A shadow stood behind him, not touching him, not moving, just there. The timestamp froze at 11:59:59. Then the feed cut. When security reviewed the footage the next morning, The elevator was parked between floors 6 and 7. The doors were closed. Power was normal. Technicians opened the doors manually. The elevator was empty. Daniel's backpack was on the floor. His phone lay beside it, screen cracked. His wallet, keys, and jacket were inside. No sign of a struggle. No blood. No damage. Only one strange detail. The emergency panel had been scratched deeply, as if someone had tried to carve something with their fingernails. The markings formed 3 words. IT went down. Police reviewed system logs. At 11:59 p.m., the elevator registered a destination request labeled Level -1. That level did not exist. Engineering confirmed the system was physically incapable of accepting such an input, yet the log showed it clearly. Over the next few weeks, strange reports followed. Residents said the elevator would sometimes stop on its own. The display would flicker. The doors would open to darkness. Even on well-lit floors, some claimed they heard breathing inside before the doors closed again. One woman reported hearing a whisper as she stepped inside, "Don't stay." The building manager shut the elevator down temporarily. During inspection, Technic. Ian's found something carved deep into the inner wall behind the paneling. A message written unevenly, like it had been scratched in panic. IT doesn't stop going down. After that discovery, the elevator was permanently sealed. Stairs became the only access. The building eventually lost tenants and was partially abandoned. But security cameras still run, and once in a while, always just before midnight, the elevator monitor activates by itself. The screen flickers, the number display flashes briefly. Not 1, not 2, but 0. And if someone watches closely, they sometimes swear they see a reflection in the dark glass of the elevator door. A man standing inside, waiting. The call came at 1:22 a.m. It rang only once, then stopped. The number belonged to Evan Miller, a 19-year-old college student who had been declared dead 6 months earlier after a late-night car crash on a rural highway. His body had been identified, buried, and mourned. The case was closed. So when his mother's phone lit up with his name, she thought it was a cruel glitch. She didn't answer. A minute later, the phone rang again. Same number. This time she answered, "Hello?" There was silence, then a sound. Soft and distant, like wind moving through a tunnel. She whispered her son's name. The sound stopped. Then a faint voice spoke. "Mom?" Her phone slipped from her hand. The voice sounded exactly like Evan. Younger, quieter, scared. "Where are you?" she whispered. There was a long pause. "I can't get out." The line went dead. Police were contacted immediately. Officers confirmed the call log. The call had originated from Evan's phone number. That phone had been buried with him, inside his coffin, 6 feet underground. Investigators assumed some kind of spoofing or hacking. But the phone company confirmed something impossible. The call was routed through a nearby tower, not through the internet. It had come from beneath the cemetery. The next night, the phone rang again. 1:22 a.m. This time, Evan's father answered. Static filled the line. Then a shaky breath. "I'm cold," a voice whispered. "Everything's heavy." The call cut. Police went to the cemetery. They checked the grave. The soil was undisturbed. No signs of digging. No collapse. No disturbance. Still, the calls continued. Always at 1:22 a.m. Always brief. Always from Evan's number. Sometimes there were words. Sometimes only breathing. Once, faint scratching. Once, a sound like fingernails sliding across wood. Audio experts examined the recordings. The voice matched Evan's speech patterns perfectly. His cadence, his accent, his breathing rhythm. It was him, or something copying him perfectly. One night, during a call, a dispatcher asked, "Evan, where are you right now?" The answer came slowly. "Under." A pause. Still under. The next call was worse. The sound of muffled crying. Then a whisper. "It's getting smaller." Cemetery workers were brought in to inspect the grave again. Ground radar showed nothing unusual. But when they placed listening equipment into the soil above the coffin, they picked up faint vibrations. Tapping. 3 slow taps. Pause. 3 more. The same pattern over and over. Authorities made the decision to exhume the grave. The process was done quietly before dawn. When the coffin was lifted out, something was wrong. The lid had deep scratch marks on the inside, the wood was splintered, and lying on the chest area was a phone, Evan's phone. It was powered off, its screen cracked, its battery supposedly dead, but when investigators checked the call log, the last outgoing call time matched exactly. 1:22 a.m., the night before. Inside the coffin, carved into the wood above where his hands would have been, were 4 words. I heard IT ring. The coffin was resealed. The case was classified. The family was told the calls were a technical anomaly. But the calls didn't stop. They just changed. Now once every few months someone else receives them. Always at 1:22 a.m. Always from a blocked number. Always the same voice. Soft, familiar, asking a simple question, "Can you hear me?" And if the person answers, they often hear something else beneath the voice. A faint echo, like sound traveling through earth, through wood, through something very deep. The clock in apartment 508 had not moved in 11 years. It was discovered during a routine inspection after the tenant failed to respond to letters, calls, or eviction notices. The building manager assumed the man had moved out quietly, until maintenance unlocked the door. Inside, everything was frozen. A half-filled glass of water sat on the kitchen counter. A jacket hung neatly on the back of a chair. A television faced the couch, paused on a news broadcast, and on the wall above the television hung a digital clock. It read 2:17 a.m. It blinked softly, as if waiting to change, but it never did. The tenant's name was Caleb Morris, a freelance editor in his early 30s. According to records, he had paid rent on time for years. His neighbors described him as quiet and polite, someone who kept to himself. The last confirmed sighting of Caleb was the night he entered his apartment at 2:14 a.m., carrying groceries. Security footage showed him unlocking the door and stepping inside. The door closed. He was never seen again. There was no sign of forced entry, no sign of struggle, no sign he ever left. Inside the apartment, police found no body, but something felt wrong. The air was unnaturally cold despite the heat being off. The silence felt heavy, like pressure in the ears. When investigators tried to reset the clock, it refused to change. They unplugged it. The display stayed lit. They removed the batteries. Till glowing, always showing 2:17 a.m. Electricians were brought in. They could not explain it. The clock had no internal power source. It should not function. Yet it did, and stranger still, every time someone stood alone in the apartment for more than a few minutes, they reported the same sensation. Time felt slow, heavy, like moving through thick air. One officer swore he heard breathing behind him. Another claimed he heard a quiet voice whisper his name. After the initial investigation stalled, the apartment was sealed. Years passed. Then, during a building-wide electrical inspection, the power was shut off completely. Every unit went dark, except 508. The clock still glowed, and something else happened. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the building's security system registered motion inside the sealed apartment. Cameras showed nothing moving, but the timestamp froze. 2:17. The system stopped recording for exactly 60 seconds. When it resumed, something new appeared. A shadow stood in the living room. Tall, still, facing the camera. It didn't move. It didn't flicker. It simply existed. Then it vanished. The footage corrupted immediately after. Technicians who reviewed the clip noticed something chilling. The shadow's outline matched Caleb's height and build exactly. Investigators searched the apartment again. This time, they found something new behind the bedroom door. Carved into the paint in thin, frantic scratches were words that hadn't been there before. "IT won't let time move." Beneath that, written smaller, "I can hear you walking outside." The building manager sealed the apartment permanently. No one was allowed inside, but neighbors began reporting strange things. Clocks in nearby units would stop briefly at 2:17. Watches would lag. Phones would freeze. People waking suddenly at night claimed they felt watched. Some heard a faint ticking sound coming from the wall. A slow, mechanical beat. Tick, tick, tick. Then silence. One tenant swore she heard knocking coming from inside the wall between her unit and 508. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. When she knocked back, the sound stopped. The next morning, she found something scratched, faintly into her wall paint. "Time ice loud in here." The building was eventually condemned. Before demolition, engineers attempted one final inspection. When they opened apartment 508 for the last time, the clock was still running, still showing 2:17, still glowing. The room felt heavier than before, as if the air resisted movement. When one worker stepped inside, his watch immediately froze. So did the camera recording, for exactly 1 minute. When everything resumed, the worker was standing closer to the center of the room. He had no memory of moving. On the wall beside him, a new message had appeared, fresh, deeply scratched. "Don't let IT reach you." The building was demolished shortly after, but people living nearby still report something strange. At exactly 2:17 a.m., their clocks sometimes stop, their phones freeze, and for just a moment, they feel time hesitate, like something is trying to move again. The phone started ringing on a Monday morning at 6:04 a.m. It didn't stop. At first, the receptionist at the small medical office assumed someone had accidentally left their phone on redial. The line rang once, paused, then rang again, over and over. When she finally picked it up, there was silence. No breathing, no background noise, just a quiet, empty connection. She hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Same number. The caller ID displayed a local landline registered to Harold Finch, a retired widower who lived alone 3 blocks away. Harold was well known in the neighborhood, quiet, polite, punctual. He visited the clinic every few months for checkups and always joked about how phones never stop talking these days. When the receptionist tried calling him back, the line rang endlessly with no answer. By noon, the phone had rung more than 40 times. Always the same number. Always silence. Police were asked to perform a welfare check. When officers arrived at Harold Finch's home, the front door was locked. No response, no sound inside. They entered through the back door. Harold was found seated in his living room chair, hands folded neatly in his lap. He had passed away peacefully in his sleep. The coroner later estimated he had died sometime during the night, hours before the first phone call. The house phone sat on a small table beside him. Its cord was unplugged. The receiver was resting perfectly in its cradle. Despite this, the clinic's phone continued to ring. Every few minutes, day and night. Always from Harold's number. Always silence. Technicians from the phone company inspected the line. They confirmed the landline had been physically disconnected and could not place outgoing calls. Yet the call logs clearly showed repeated incoming calls originating from it. When they tried tracing the signal, it produced an error code normally associated with inactive or abandoned infrastructure. On the second night, something changed. At 2:18 a.m., a nurse on overnight duty answered the phone. This time she heard something. A faint sound, like air moving through a narrow space. Then a voice, very quiet. Hoarse. "Hello?" She froze. "Mr. Finch?" she asked. There was a long pause. Then the voice whispered, "I think I missed my appointment." The line went dead. The nurse began shaking. She knew Harold had died. Police were called again. That night, officers stayed at the clinic to monitor the calls. At 2:18 a.m., exactly, the phone rang. An officer answered on speaker. The room fell silent. Then came a sound like slow breathing, a scraping noise, faint and rhythmic. Then a whisper. "I can't reach anyone." The officer asked where he was. The voice replied, "I'm still at home." Another pause. "But it's very dark now." The call ended. Police returned to Harold's house. Nothing had changed. The air felt stale. The chair was still positioned exactly as before. The phone was still unplugged. But this time they noticed something new. On the wall behind the chair were faint markings, scratches, thin, uneven lines forming words. "I tried calling." The calls continued over the next 2 days, always at 2:18 a.m. Sometimes the voice spoke, sometimes it only breathed. Once it whispered, "Why won't it stop ringing?" On the third night, the call lasted longer than usual. The voice sounded weaker, more distant. "I think I'm fading," it said. Then very softly, "Please, answer." A faint tapping sound followed. 3 slow taps, then silence. The phone stopped ringing after that night. No more calls, no more signals. The line went completely dead. The phone company removed the number from service. Months later, the house was sold. The new owners renovated the living room. When they removed the wallpaper behind the chair, they found something etched into the wall beneath. Dozens of repeated words carved deep into the plaster. "Why won't IT stop ringing?" Beneath them, in smaller letters, almost careful, "I just want IT to end." The new owners moved out within weeks. Neighbors say that sometimes, late at night, if you stand near the house, you can hear a faint ringing sound drifting through the walls. Soft, distant, unending. And if you listen closely enough, beneath the ringing there's a whisper, tired and confused, still trying to reach someone who will answer. The footprints appeared after the snow stopped. Overnight, a light winter storm covered the town in a clean white layer. Smooth, untouched, perfect for showing movement. Morning. Residents noticed something strange near the old river path behind the library. A single set of footprints. They began at the edge of the sidewalk. Adult-sized, boot-shaped, perfectly clear. They moved in a straight line toward the frozen river, and then they stopped. No turning, no overlap, no signs of slipping, just an abrupt end, as if the person had vanished mid-step. Police were called when a jogger noticed the prints didn't continue in any direction. Officers followed the trail carefully. There were no marks leading into the river, no disturbances in the snow, no animal tracks intersecting, just one clean trail that ended in nothing. A search of the area turned up a wallet half buried near the last footprint. Inside was an ID belonging to Thomas Reed, a 41-year-old, local delivery driver. He had been reported missing the previous evening after failing to return home. His car was later found parked legally near the trailhead. Keys were inside. Phone missing. No signs of struggle. Search teams combed the river, the woods, the nearby streets. Nothing. The snow remained untouched beyond the final footprint. Investigators documented the scene, confused by how a grown man could simply stop existing in the open. The strangest detail came later. Security footage from a nearby traffic camera showed Thomas walking toward the trail at 11:47 p.m. He was alone, moving slowly, but as he reached the edge of the path, he stopped. He turned his head slightly, as if listening to someone behind him. Then he nodded and stepped forward. That was when the footage glitched for less than a second. When it resumed, the path was empty. No Thomas, no movement, just falling snow. A few hours later, residents near the river reported hearing footsteps outside their windows. Slow, crunching. But when they looked, there was no one there. Only fresh footprints leading up to their porch, and stopping. Over the following days, more reports came in. Footprints appearing overnight in locked yards, on rooftops, in the middle of parking lots. Always a single set. Always stopping abruptly. Always leading nowhere. Then the messages began. Thomas's phone, which had never been recovered, started sending text messages to his wife. The first message was simple. "Did you see where I went?" She thought it was a cruel prank. Then came another. "I followed the sound," and another, "It keeps asking me to see what's past the step." Police traced the messages. They did not come from any active tower. They had no location data, but every message timestamp matched moments when new footprints were discovered somewhere in town. One night, an officer stood watch near the river where Thomas vanished. At 2:13 a.m., he heard something behind him. A soft crunch, like snow being stepped on. He turned quickly. Nothing. But fresh footprints appeared beside his own. One step, then another. Then they stopped inches from his boots. The officer felt a sudden pressure in the air, like standing too close to someone. He heard a whisper at his ear. "Do you see it now?" He ran. The next morning, investigators reviewed body cam footage. At the moment the officer turned, the camera froze for half a second. In that frozen frame, a faint outline could be seen standing beside him, tall, featureless, almost human. After that, the footprints stopped appearing. The text stopped, the case went cold. Years later, during a particularly heavy snowfall, a maintenance worker clearing the river path found something new. A single word carved deeply into the frozen ground, "step," beneath it, faintly visible under the ice, were dozens of overlapping footprints, all pointing inward toward the same invisible point, none leading away. Even now, when fresh snow falls, locals say they sometimes see a low-knee trail forming near the river, one set of prints, perfectly spaced, leading forward, ending in nothing. And if you stand quietly nearby, you might hear a voice carried on the cold air. Calm, curious, and close. Are you coming too? Room 214 was never supposed to be used again. It sat at the far end of a quiet roadside motel, sealed for nearly 15 years after a strange incident no one liked to talk about. Management claimed it had structural issues, but staff knew that wasn't the real reason. Guests who stayed near it complained of knocking, soft at first, then louder, always coming from inside the empty room. The last official guest to stay there was Laura Bennett, a traveling nurse who checked in late one autumn night and never checked out. Her car was still parked outside the next morning. Her suitcase sat unopened on the bed. Her phone lay on the nightstand, battery dead, and the bathroom light was on. But Laura was gone. No signs of struggle, no forced entry, no open windows. The door had been locked from the inside. Police searched the room thoroughly. Nothing was missing. Nothing was disturbed. It looked as though she had simply stepped out and never returned, except for one thing. Written faintly on the bathroom mirror as if traced with a fingertip through steam, were the words, "IT answers back." No one could explain what that meant. The motel closed room 214 permanently. Years passed. New owners took over. They renovated everything. New paint, new locks, new wiring. But they left room 214 untouched. Too many complaints? Too many staff refused to go near it. One night, a maintenance worker named Carl was asked to check a water leak nearby. He reluctantly approached room 214 to shut off a valve inside. He unlocked the door. The air inside was cold and stale. The room looked normal. Too normal. As he stepped inside, the door clicked shut behind him. He froze. From the bathroom came a sound. A faint knock. 3 slow taps. Carl called out, asking if anyone was there. The knocking stopped. Then a voice replied, soft, careful, almost curious. "Hello?" Carl's breath caught. The voice sounded young. Female. He asked who was there. A pause. Then the voice said, "Are you the one who answers now?" The bathroom door was slightly open, dark inside. Carl backed toward the exit. The doorknob wouldn't turn. From the bathroom came another sound. Footsteps. Slow. Bare. Stopping just behind the door. Then the voice whispered, "You can hear me, right?" The lights flickered. The mirror inside the bathroom fogged suddenly, though there was no steam. Words began to appear, traced from the inside outward. "Don't leave me alone!" Carl screamed and slammed his shoulder against the door. It opened. He fell into the hallway. When coworkers rushed over, room 214 was empty again. No voice, no movement. But the mirror inside now had more writing, different handwriting, different sizes, all saying the same thing: someone always answers. After that night, strange things started happening. Guests began receiving calls on the room phones, but when they answered, no one was there. Some heard breathing. Others heard faint knocking through the receiver. A few claimed to hear someone whisper their name. The front desk logs showed calls originating from room 214. But the room's phone wasn't connected. One night, the motel manager answered a call at 2:14 a.m. A woman's voice whispered, "Is anyone there?" The manager swallowed hard and asked who was calling. The voice replied, "I'm in the room." He checked the security monitor. Room 214 was dark, empty. The voice continued, softer now. "It talks to me when it's quiet." Then, after a pause, "It says I can't leave." The line went dead. Police investigated again. This time, they tore into the walls. Behind the bathroom mirror, they discovered something horrifying. A narrow maintenance cavity, just wide enough for a person to squeeze into. Inside were scratch marks, dozens of them, layers upon layers, and etched into the wood, overlapping again and again, were names. Dozens of names, some crossed out, some repeated. Among them, Laura Bennett. At the bottom, freshly carved, were 3 new words. "You heard me." The motel closed permanently soon after. The building still stands, boarded up. Locals say that late at night, if you walk past it, you can hear a soft knocking from inside. 3 slow taps, pause, 3 more. And sometimes, if the air is very still, a voice follows. Quiet, hopeful, and waiting. Can you answer me? The message arrived at 3:11 a.m. It was short. Just 4 words. I made it home. It came from the phone number of Daniel Price, a man who had been buried 2 days earlier. Daniel had died suddenly at 38. A quiet accountant, recently divorced, living alone. His death was ruled natural causes. No signs of struggle. No mystery, at least at first. His sister, Emily, was the one who received the message. She stared at her phone for a long time before opening it again, convinced exhaustion was playing tricks on her. But the message was still there. Sent from Daniel's number. Time-stamped clearly. 3:11 a.m. Her hands began to shake. She typed back, Dan? The message showed as delivered. Then, typing appeared. 3 dots. They stopped, started again, stopped. A minute passed. Then another message came through. I couldn't find the door at first. Emily's breath caught in her chest. Daniel had lived in a small basement apartment with only one entrance. She called the number. It rang once, then stopped. At 3:17 a.m., another message arrived. It's quieter now. Emily contacted police the next morning. Officers confirmed what she already knew. Daniel's phone had been buried with him. It was logged as powered off. No signal. No data activity. Yet the message logs were real. The phone company couldn't explain it. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. At 3:11 a.m. exactly, her phone vibrated again. I hear footsteps upstairs. Her heart pounded. She lived alone. She typed back, Where are you? Several minutes passed. Then, still here, a pause. Below. Emily dropped her phone. Police were called again. They checked her home. Nothing out of place. No signs of entry. But while officers were present, her phone buzzed once more. One officer watched the screen light up. Message received. I don't think they know I'm gone. The officer went pale. From that night on, the messages came every evening, always at 3:11, always short, always unsettling. I can hear them walking. The light doesn't turn on. It smells like dirt. Emily began sleeping with her lights on. She stopped replying, hoping the messages would stop. They didn't. Instead, they changed. They keep covering me again. I tried to knock. I think I scared someone. One message included something new, a photo, blurry, dark. At first it looked like nothing. Then she noticed the texture. Wood, close up, scratched, with faint marks etched into it. Letters, EMILY. She screamed and dropped the phone. Police reopened the case. The cemetery was searched. Daniel's grave showed no signs of disturbance. The soil was undisturbed, the coffin intact, but when they opened it, something was wrong. The inside lid was scratched deeply. Long, uneven grooves. Words carved again and again in a frantic hand. I'm not asleep. It's loud down here. Why won't anyone answer? The phone was inside. Battery dead, cracked, cold. The coroner could not explain how the markings were made. The coffin was resealed. Authorities quietly advised Emily to change her number. She die. For a few weeks, nothing happened. Then one night, her new phone buzzed. Unknown number, 3:11 a.m. The message read, I found you again. Her blood ran cold. She threw the phone across the room. It buzzed again. I don't think I'm supposed to leave. Another message arrived before she could react. But it's so dark when you stop answering. Emily moved away soon after. New city, new number. No forwarding, no contact. For months, there was silence. Then one night, her laptop lit up by itself. A notification appeared in the corner of the screen. New message received. Sender, unknown. Time, 3:11 a.m. The message contained only one line. I hear you breathing now. Authorities never linked the messages to any device, network, or account. The cemetery later reported something strange. Maintenance workers heard tapping beneath the ground late at night. Slow, rhythmic, like someone knocking from below. 3 taps, pause, 3 more. And sometimes, if you stand close enough, you can hear a faint voice carried through toggle away by the soil. Please, don't stop answering. The voicemail appeared at 2:44 a.m. No missed call, no ringing, just a notification, new voicemail, 0:32 seconds. The number was unfamiliar. When Laura pressed play, she expected silence or static. Instead, she heard her own voice, soft, tired, saying her name. Laura, can you hear me? Her stomach tightened. The recording ended with a faint click. She checked the timestamp. The message had been recorded at 2:44 a.m. At that time, she had been asleep, alone. Laura tried calling the number back. It rang once, then stopped. No voicemail, no error message, just silence. The next morning, she checked her call log again. The number had disappeared completely, as if it had never existed. That afternoon, she mentioned it to a coworker, half laughing it off. He suggested maybe her phone glitched or recorded audio accidentally. She tried to forget it. That night, at exactly 2:44 a.m., her phone vibrated again. New voicemail. This time, she didn't touch it right away. The notification preview showed only 4 words. I'm still here. Her heart pounded as she pressed play. The audio crackled, then her voice again, unmistakably hers. I think I'm inside the house. A soft sound followed, like a floorboard creaking, then whispering, not words, breathing. The message ended abruptly. Laura sat upright in bed, staring into the darkness of her bedroom. Her house was silent. She checked every room, nothing out of place, doors locked, windows shut. No one inside. She didn't sleep again that night. The next day, she went to her phone provider. They ran diagnostics. There was no record of incoming calls, no voicemail servers, no originating number. The technician told her gently, "There's nothing here." That night, the voicemail arrived again, 2:44 a.m., this time it was longer. Her own voice whispered shakily, I keep walking through the rooms, but they don't end. A pause. I think the house is bigger now. A faint sound followed, like distant knocking echoing down a hallway. Laura whispered out loud, "Stop." Her phone buzzed immediately. A new message appeared, "You can hear me." She dropped the phone. Over the next several nights, the messages became more detailed. They described things only she would know. The creaky stair near the kitchen, the loose vent in the hallway, the cold spot near the laundry door. One message said, I found the place you never go anymore. She felt sick. That place was the old storage crawl space beneath her house, sealed years ago after flooding. She had never mentioned it to anyone. At 2:44 a.m. the following night, her phone rang instead of buzzing. Against her better judgment, she answered. There was silence. Then her own voice spoke slowly. It's hard to breathe down here, she whispered. Who are you? A long pause. Then, I'm you. Her blood ran cold. The voice continued, trembling now. I think I didn't make it out. A scraping sound followed. Wood against wood, then faint knocking. 3 slow taps. From somewhere inside the house, Laura covered her mouth to stop herself from screaming. The call ended. She called the police. They searched the house top to bottom. Nothing. When they reached the crawl space, they found it still sealed, but the wooden panel was marked with scratches, fresh ones, thin, uneven, like fingernails. Etched into the wood were words carved again and again. Answer me. The officer sealed the crawl space and advised Laura to stay elsewhere. She moved into a hotel that night. At 2:44 a.m., her phone buzzed. A voicemail. She didn't open it. Then another arrived, and another, all from the same unknown source. She finally deleted them without listening. The next morning, curiosity overcame fear. She restored one message from the trash. It was quiet at first, then a whisper, softer than before. Weaker. I can't hear you anymore. A pause. I think the house is closing. Then a slow, dragging sound, like something being pulled away. The messages stopped after that. Weeks passed. Nothing else happened. Laura eventually moved away, sold the house, never looked back. The new owners renovated. When they removed the old crawlspace panel, they found something strange. Behind it, not a body, not bones, but a phone, cracked, dead, buried deep between beams. When technicians powered it on, the last saved voicemail played automatically. A woman's voice whispered, If you hear this, please answer. And faintly, beneath her voice, another sound echoed. A phone ringing. The first complaint came from apartment 3 Billions. The tenant called building management late one night and said there was a new window in her bedroom. The manager assumed she was confused. The building was old, but its layout had never changed. Every apartment had been inspected dozens of times. Still, to be polite, he went to check. What he found made him stop in the doorway. On the far wall of the bedroom, where there had always been solid brick, was now a narrow window, tall, vertical, framed in peeling white paint. It looked old, far older than the building itself. The glass was cloudy, uneven, slightly warped. The tenant swore it hadn't been there the night before. She said she woke up at 3:02 a.m. to a tapping sound, soft, careful. When she turned on the lamp, the window was there, and something was tapping from the other side. The manager told her it must have always existed and she simply hadn't noticed it. But when he checked the building plans later, there was no window listed for that wall. None at all. The next morning, maintenance sealed the opening with drywall. Problem solved, or so they thought. 2 nights later, another tenant, this time in apartment 5A, reported the same thing, a new window, same shape, same height, same peeling white frame, same faint tapping. Except apartment 5A wasn't even on the same side of the building. Security footage from the hallway showed nothing unusual, but at exactly 3:02 a.m., the lights flickered, and the camera briefly glitched. When it came back, the wall outside 5A looked slightly different, like it had depth, like something had been added. The tenant said she heard whispering, not words, breathing, slow, patient. The building manager called the police. Officers inspected both apartments. In each case, when they scraped away the drywall behind the window, they found something disturbing. Old wood, very old, blackened with age, and carved into it, in dozens of overlapping handwritings, were phrases. "Let me see. It's dark here. You can hear me, Kay. Ain't you?" The windows were sealed again, this time with metal panels. The building owner ordered an inspection of the entire structure. That's when they discovered something impossible. Behind several walls, not connected by hallways or ducts, there existed narrow hollow spaces, vertical shafts, too narrow for a person to stand in, too tall to see the bottom. And inside them, scratches, thousands of them, running upward, as if someone had tried to climb or reach. Every shaft contained the same markings carved over decades. "Please look back. Don't close it. I'm still here." Then the sounds began spreading. Tenants on different floors began reporting tapping at night. Always at 3:02 a.m. Always 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. Some said the tapping moved. Others said it came from inside the walls themselves. One resident, a night shift nurse, recorded audio on her phone. At first it was only tapping, then a whisper, clearer than before. "I can see your room." She moved out the next day, but the building didn't empty fast enough. One night, a fire alarm went off on the 7th floor. Firefighters arrived to find smoke pouring from a single apartment. Inside, they found the wall torn open from the inside, not outward. In the middle of the room, the strange window stood open. Behind it was darkness, no visible wall, just depth, and something else, a faint shape, pressed just beyond the glass, like a face trying to push through. The fire was never explained. There were no burn marks near the window, only melted wiring and blackened claw-like marks around the frame. The building was condemned shortly afterward. Before demolition, a final walkthrough was ordered. One inspector entered alone. His body camera recorded everything. At 3:02 a.m., the lights flickered. The wall in front of him began to change. Paint cracked. Wood shifted. A window frame slowly formed where none had been. The tapping began. 3 slow knocks. Then a voice came through the wall. Calm, familiar, pleading. "Please, just look." The inspector whispered, "Who are you?" The voice answered, "The one who watched from the other side." The feed cut to static. When workers returned later, the inspector was gone. Only his helmet remained, leaning against a wall that now looked perfectly normal. No window, no opening, just smooth paint, but scratched faintly into it were fresh words. Now you can see me too. The building was demolished weeks later, yet people passing the empty lot still report something strange. At exactly 3:02 a.m., they sometimes hear tapping in the air, 3 slow knocks, and if they stop walking, if they turn around, they swear they see the outline of a window hanging in empty space, waiting to be noticed. The broadcast wasn't supposed to exist. At exactly 1:36 a.m., televisions across a small rural county briefly switched channels on their own. No signal warning, no interruption notice, just a sudden cut to a black screen labeled, Channel 6, Emergency Transmission. The problem was simple. Channel 6 had been shut down for over 20 years. It once belonged to a local public access station that went bankrupt after a fire destroyed its studio. The building had been abandoned ever since. Yet that night the signal was strong, clear, too clear. The screen flickered, then stabilized into a grainy black and white image of a man sitting at a desk. He looked pale, tired, and slightly out of focus. A microphone sat in front of him. He stared directly into the camera. After several seconds he spoke. "Is anyone watching?" His voice was strained, like he hadn't used it in a long time. I don't know if this is still working." The feed cut for a moment, then returned. The man swallowed hard. "My name is Aaron Bell. I was a broadcast technician here. If you're seeing this, something's gone wrong." The transmission lasted only 90 seconds before cutting to static. But in that short time, viewers across town watched in silence. Some recorded it, others assumed it was a prank. Until the next night, at 1:36 a.m. Exactly, Channel 6 activated again. This time the man looked worse, dark circles under his eyes, his hands trembled as he gripped the desk. "I think I've been here a long time," he said quietly. "I don't remember leaving." Behind him, the studio lights flickered weakly. The set looked burned, melted, charred. "I hear people sometimes, footsteps, but when I call out they don't answer." The screen glitched. For a single frame something moved behind him, tall, thin, too close. Then the feed cut. Local authorities were notified. They investigated the old station building. It was locked, boarded, covered in dust, no power, no broadcasting equipment intact. The control room was destroyed in the fire decades earlier. But deep inside the building they found something disturbing. An old camera still mounted on a tripod, facing a chair. The lens was warm, and beside it lay a logbook. The last entry was dated the night of the fire, written in hurried handwriting, "Signals still live. Something answers when I speak." Over the next week the broadcasts continued, always at 1:36 a.m. Each time Aaron looked more exhausted, more afraid. "The lights don't turn off anymore," he said one night. "They hum. Even when I close my eyes." Another night I hear breathing behind the camera. Then quietly, it's learning my voice. Viewers began to notice strange details. Sometimes the audio lagged slightly, as if being repeated. Sometimes Aaron's words echoed before he finished speaking. And sometimes another voice whispered beneath his, low, distorted, almost mimicking him. On the 6th broadcast, Aaron leaned close to the camera. Tears streaked down his face. "If you can hear this, please don't watch anymore." He hesitated, then added, barely audible, "It notices when you listen." The screen flickered violently. The image warped. For a moment, the face on screen wasn't Aaron's. It was stretched, wrong, smiling. Then the feed cut to black. The next night the broadcast returned, but Aaron was gone. The camera now showed an empty chair. The microphone crackled. A voice spoke, not quite human, not quite his. "Thank you for staying tuned." The voice paused, then added, "We're still broadcasting." Since then Channel 6 no longer appears on official listings, but people swear that sometimes late at night their TVs switch on by themselves, always to static, always at 1:36 a.m. And sometimes, if the volume is turned up high enough, a familiar voice can be heard beneath the noise. Tired, echoing, trapped. Is anyone still watching? The list was updated every Friday morning. It hung on a corkboard inside the local police station, a simple sheet titled Missing Persons. Most weeks, only 1 or 2 new names appeared, sometimes none at all. But one Friday, something strange happened. A name appeared that no one remembered adding, Elias Rowe. age 34, last seen yesterday. The problem was simple. No officer remembered filing the report. There was no photo attached, no address, no family contact, just the name. At first, they assumed it was a clerical mistake. Someone forgot to finish paperwork. Someone typed a placeholder and forgot to remove it. But when the clerk tried to delete the entry, the computer froze. When it restarted, the name was still there. That afternoon, Officer Grant tried to look up Elias Rowe in the system. No driver's license, no birth certificate, no employment records, no social security number. It was as if the man had never existed. Still, the system insisted he was missing. That night, the station phone rang at 2:09 a.m. The caller didn't speak. There was only breathing, slow, uneven, then a whisper. "They put me on the board." The call disconnected, the number couldn't be traced. The next morning, another detail appeared on the missing poster. Under last known location, a new line had been added, near the records room. No one admitted to writing it. Security footage was reviewed. At 2:07 a.m., the camera outside the records office flickered. For 3 seconds, the hallway appeared distorted, stretched. Then the image returned to normal. No person was visible. Inside the records room, nothing appeared disturbed, except for one thing, a faint set of fingerprints on the glass of the corkboard. They were smeared downward, as if someone had pressed their hands against it from the inside. Over the next few days, more details filled themselves in. Height, weight, hair color, all typed in overnight, all accurate. Though no one knew how, then something worse happened. A second name appeared beneath Elias Rowe. Mara Rowe, age 29, last seen today. The officer on duty felt a chill crawl up his spine. No missing report had been filed. And yet the timestamp showed the entry had been added at 2:09 a.m. That night, the phone rang again. This time the voice was clearer. "There's more of us now." The officer asked who was calling. A pause. Then softly, "We're the ones you forgot." Over the next week, more names appeared, always at night, always without paperwork. Each time, the timestamp was the same. 2:09 a.m. Security footage began to show something strange. At exactly 2:09, the hallway lights dimmed. A faint distortion appeared near the corkboard, like heat rippling in the air. Sometimes, a shadow passed across the wall, never fully formed, never still. One officer reported hearing scratching behind the wall where the board hung. Another heard WH. Whispering, overlapping voices murmuring names. Late one night, a junior officer stayed behind to monitor the cameras. At 2:09 a.m., the screen flickered. The hallway camera froze, then slowly resumed. But now, someone was standing in front of the board. Their face was blurred, their outline wrong, too thin, too tall. They lifted an arm and pointed to an empty space on the list. Then the screen cut to black. When the footage resumed, a new name had appeared. The officer's own. Panic spread through the department. They tried removing the board entirely. When they took it down, the wall behind it was covered in names, hundreds of them, scratched into the paint, some shallow, some deep, all different handwriting. All repeating the same phrase beneath each name, seen but not found. The board was destroyed, burned, thrown away. But the next morning, a new one appeared in the same place. Clean, blank, waiting. By the end of the month, several officers resigned. One disappeared. His name appeared on the board the following morning. At 2:09 a.m., the station phone rang again. This time the voice sounded closer, calmer, almost relieved. "They're starting to remember us." A pause. "You'll remember too." The call ended. The final incident occurred when a senior detective stayed late to document everything. At 2:09 a.m., the lights flickered. The temperature dropped. He watched as letters slowly formed on the board by themselves. One line, one name, his own. The security camera caught him stepping backward in horror. Then the footage distorted. The image stretched. And the last thing recorded was a hand pressing flat against the lens from the inside. The station closed shortly after. Officially, it was due to structural issues. The building still stands empty, but people walking past late at night sometimes see light inside, and if they stop long enough they swear they can Hear whispering. Soft voices repeating names, waiting to be written down. The stairwell wasn't on any floor plan. That was the first strange thing. The hospital had been standing for more than 40 years, renovated multiple times, blueprints archived and digitized. Yet one maintenance worker swore he'd found a stairwell that didn't appear on any map. It was behind a gray service door in the West Wing basement. The door had no label, no warning sign, just a narrow metal handle worn smooth as if touched often. When opened, it revealed a concrete stairwell spiraling downward. No lights, no visible end. The worker assumed it led to old utility levels and reported it to administration. They told him there was no such stairwell. That night, security checked the area. The door was there, unlocked. When they opened it, cold air rushed out, carrying a faint smell of damp concrete and something metallic. Blood, maybe. The flashlight beam didn't reach the bottom. The stairs just kept going. Security marked the door and sealed it temporarily. At 2:26 a.m., the motion sensor outside the door activated. Camera footage showed the door slowly opening by itself. No one stood there. The darkness inside looked thicker than normal shadow. The camera flickered, then something moved. A shape passed upward across the frame like a shadow climbing. The feed cut. When security reviewed the footage, they noticed something disturbing. At the exact moment the camera cut out, a sound registered on the audio channel. Footsteps, ascending, slow, heavy, one step at a time. The next morning, the door was found open again. Fresh scuff marks lined the steps, not going down but coming up, bare footprints, wet, leading to the threshold, then stopping. Staff were instructed not to approach the stairwell. A steel barrier was installed, warning signs added, but reports continued. Nurses working night shift. IFs claimed to hear footsteps echoing beneath their floors. Patients complained of voices whispering from the walls. Some said they heard someone counting, quietly, backward, 10, 9, 8. One nurse swore she heard her name spoken from the stairwell door. She quit the next day. A week later, a janitor named Luis failed to clock out after his shift. His cart was found near the West Wing. The stairwell door was ajar. Inside, his flashlight lay on the steps, still on. Security reviewed the footage. At 2:26 a.m., the camera activated again. Luis appeared in frame, standing before the door. He hesitated, looked over his shoulder, then slowly stepped inside. The door did not close behind him. The camera kept recording. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the sound began. Footsteps coming up, slow, wet, heavy. The camera shook slightly. Then cut to static. Luis was never found. After that, the hospital sealed the entire wing. Concrete was poured into the stairwell entrance. A steel plate welded over it. The door was removed. Officially, the stairwell never existed, but strange reports continued. Elevator buttons for non-existent floors lighting up. Call bells activating in empty rooms. Footsteps echoing beneath the building at night. And sometimes, faint voices counting, backward. Years later, during a major renovation, contractors drilled into the West Wing foundation. Their drill broke through into empty space, a hollow chamber. Inside, they lowered a camera. The footage showed stairs, perfectly preserved, stretching downward into darkness, and carved into the concrete walls, hundreds of overlapping messages. "IT doesn't end, we're still walking, don't follow." At the bottom of the visible frame, something moved. A shadow passed beneath the camera, then another, and another, ascending. The feed cut instantly. When workers pulled the camera back up, the cable. E was wet, not with water, with something dark and sticky. The hole was filled with concrete the same day. Official reports called it a structural anomaly, but hospital staff still talk. They say that at 2:26 a.m., if the building is quiet enough you can hear it. Footsteps, slow, measured, coming from far below. And sometimes, just before the sound stops, a voice whispers from the floor beneath your feet, "Your turn." The cassette was found in a drawer that wasn't supposed to exist. During renovations at a small-town police station scheduled for demolition, workers discovered a narrow compartment behind a filing cabinet. Inside were dust-covered folders, a rusted recorder, and a single unlabeled cassette tape. No inventory listed it. No officer remembered placing it there. Written faintly on the tape in pencil were 3 words: "Play after hours." Curiosity won. That night, a junior officer stayed late and powered on the old tape recorder. At first, there was only static, then a click, then breathing. Slow, uneven, very close to the microphone. A man's voice followed, quiet but steady. "If you're hearing this, then you stayed." The officer froze. The voice continued. "My name is Thomas Hale. I was assigned to night intake. I think something is wrong with the interview room." A soft hum filled the background, like fluorescent lights buzzing. "You can hear it too, right? That sound under everything." The tape crackled. Thomas cleared his throat. It started answering questions before anyone asked them. The recording cut briefly, then resumed. "I locked the door. I know I did. But it keeps opening." A sudden metallic click echoed through the speaker, then muffled footsteps. Running. The officer listening swallowed hard. The tape continued. "I shouldn't have stayed alone." Static surged. Then a new sound. Knocking. 3 slow taps. Pause. 3 more. Thomas whispered, "B." Barely audible now. "It knows my voice." A sharp scraping sound followed, like fingernails dragged across metal. The tape abruptly stopped. The officer sat frozen for several seconds before rewinding. When he pressed play again, the tape sounded different. No static, no background hum, just silence. Then a voice, but not Thomas's. This one was deeper, flattened, wrong. "Thank you for listening." The officer jumped back, nearly dropping the recorder. The tape clicked off by itself. Shaken, he sealed the cassette in an evidence bag and locked it in storage. At 2:27 a.m. that night, the station's motion sensors activated. Cameras showed the evidence room door slowly opening. No one stood there. Inside, the tape recorder turned on by itself. The cassette began to play. Audio logs captured the sound. Footsteps, dragging. Then a whisper, clearer than before. "He stayed. You're still here." The security feed glitched violently. When it returned, the evidence shelf was empty. The tape was gone. The recorder sat on the floor, its buttons scratched deeply. The next morning, officers reviewed the overnight footage. One frame stood out. For a fraction of a second, the camera had captured a figure standing inside the evidence room. Tall, unnaturally thin. Its face blurred, but its mouth was open far too wide. And behind it, scratched into the wall in uneven lines, were fresh words. "Press play." After that night, unexplained recordings began appearing on police computers. Short audio files, unnamed, each only a few seconds long, each containing faint breathing, and the sound of a cassette rewinding. Then, one night, a new file appeared. Its file name was a badge number. An active officer. When played, it contained his own voice, panicked, whispering, "I didn't mean to listen." Moments later, that officer vanished during a night shift. His patrol car was found idling, radio on, "Do." R open. No sign of struggle. Only a small cassette lying on the driver's seat, unlabeled. When investigators attempted to destroy it, the tape jammed the shredder. When burned, it wouldn't catch. When submerged in water, it continued to play. Quietly, relentlessly. The station shut down the old wing permanently. But the tapes keep appearing, in lockers, on desks, inside drawers that were empty minutes earlier. Always unlabeled, always warm to the touch. And if someone makes the mistake of pressing play, they hear a voice welcoming them. Soft, patient, familiar, good. You're listening now. No one remembered when the door first appeared. It was just there one morning at the end of a short hallway in an old municipal archive building. The hallway had always ended in a blank wall, but now there was a narrow gray door with a brass handle and a small plaque that read, "Storage, authorized access only." The strange thing was that no key fit it. Maintenance tried every master key. None worked. The door didn't budge. So they left it alone. For weeks, nothing happened. Then one night, at exactly 3:33 a.m., the security camera facing the hallway flickered. The timestamp glitched, and the door slowly opened by itself. Inside was darkness. Not shadow, but something deeper, heavier. The door stayed open for exactly 12 seconds. Then it closed. When the morning staff reviewed the footage, they assumed it was a system malfunction. But the next night, the same thing happened. 3:33 a.m. Open, pause, close. Always 12 seconds. Always silent. After a week, someone noticed something new. Each time the door opened, the camera audio recorded a faint sound. A breath, not mechanical. Human. A whisper barely above silence. Hello. A junior archivist named Naomi volunteered to stay late and watch the hallway in person. At 3:32 a.m., the air changed. Colder, heavier. The lights flickered once. Then the door creaked open. Naomi stood frozen. Inside wasn't a storage room. It looked like a long corridor stretching impossibly far, lit by weak flickering lights. The walls were stained and scratched. The floor looked worn, as if many people had walked it barefoot. She heard something echo from deep inside. Footsteps, slow, approaching. She whispered, "Hello?" The footsteps stopped. A voice replied, distant but clear, "You can see me?" Naomi stumbled backward. The door began to close. Just before it shut, she saw a hand reach out from the darkness. Thin, pale, trembling. The door slammed. The hallway lights returned to normal. Naomi quit the next day, but the door continued opening every night. At 3:33 a.m., always 12 seconds. Soon, new sounds joined the whispers. Murmurs, soft crying, sometimes multiple voices overlapping. Security logs began recording brief audio fragments. "We're still waiting. Don't lock it. It opens for you too." One night, the camera caught something different. When the door opened, a figure stepped halfway out. Only halfway. The rest of its body remained inside the darkness, as if the doorway itself was cutting it off. The figure raised its head. Its face was blurred, stretched, unfinished. It lifted its mouth and spoke clearly into the camera. "You're early." Then the door slammed shut. The next morning, a new plaque had appeared beneath the handle. Carved into the metal. Access granted at T333. Authorities were called. They tried to remove the door. The wall around it crumbled, but the frame remained, perfectly intact, floating where the wall had been. They tried welding it shut. The welds cracked overnight. They tried sealing the hallway. The door reappeared elsewhere in the building. Always at the end of a corridor. Always waiting. Then people began to go missing. A janitor on the night shift. A security guard. An electrician. Each disappearance happened at exactly 3:33 a.m. Each time, the camera showed the same thing. The door opening. A pause. Someone stepping inside willingly. And never returning. After the third disappearance, the building was evacuated. Power was cut. Cameras removed. The city declared it unsafe and sealed it permanently. But even now, nearby buildings report strange disturbances. At exactly 3:33 a.m., elevators stop between floors. Doors in empty hallways unlock themselves. Security cameras briefly display a gray door where none should exist. And sometimes, people working late swear they hear a quiet knock from behind a wall that shouldn't open. 3 slow knocks. A pause. Then a voice, calm and patient. It's time. Those who hear it often feel an overwhelming urge to answer, to open, to step through, because somehow the voice always sounds familiar, as if it already knows them. The first call came in at 11:58 p.m. It was a hang-up, no voice, no background noise. Just a silent connection that lasted 2 seconds before disconnecting. Dispatch logged it and moved on. 2 minutes later, the same number called again. Still silent. The system traced it to an abandoned house on the edge of town, a place that had been condemned after a fire years earlier. No power, no phone service, no utilities at all. At 12:03 a.m., the phone rang again. This time, when the dispatcher answered, she heard breathing. Slow, uneven, too close to the microphone. "Hello?" she asked. A long pause. Then a faint whisper replied, "You called me first." The dispatcher froze. She checked the screen again. The incoming number was still the abandoned house. "I didn't call you," she said carefully. The voice hesitated, then answered softly, "But you always do." The line went dead. Police were sent to the location for a welfare check. The house sat dark at the end of a gravel road, windows boarded, front door chained. Officers forced entry. Inside, the air smelled old and damp. Burn marks still scarred the walls from the fire years earlier. In the center of the living room stood an old rotary phone on a small table. Its cord was cut. The line wasn't connected to anything. Yet its indicator light blinked faintly. The officers documented everything and left. At 12:03 a.m. the following night, dispatch received another call. Same number. This time the voice sounded clearer, almost relieved. "I hear you again," the dispatcher asked who was speaking. The voice replied, "I don't remember my name." A pause. Then quietly, "I think it burned with the house." The call ended. Over the next few nights the calls continued, always at 12:03. Always from the same disconnected number. Each time the voice said a little more. "I'm cold. I can't find the door. There's smoke again." Dispatchers began logging the calls carefully. Audio specialists reviewed the recordings. They noticed something unsettling. Behind the voice, faint but constant, was a crackling sound, like fire. And beneath that, another sound, a rhythmic clicking. A rotary dial being turned. One night, a dispatcher spoke back, "Where are you right now?" There was a long silence. Then the voice whispered, "In the place you left." The call ended. The next morning, officers returned to the abandoned house. Inside they found something new. On the wall above the phone, burned into the wood, were fresh markings. "You still answer." The phone was warm, despite having no power. After that, the calls grew more urgent. The voice began to panic. "It's getting louder. I can smell it again. Please don't hang up." One dispatcher stayed on the line longer than protocol allowed. She whispered, "What happened to you?" The voice trembled. There was shouting, then heat, then nothing but noise. A crackle surged through the line. The voice cried out suddenly, "It's starting again." The call cut off mid-sentence. At 12:03 a.m., the next night, every phone in the dispatch center rang at once, all showing the same number. When one was answered, all others fell silent. The voice came through clearer than ever. Too clear. "You picked up again." Then, softly, "Now you can hear it too." A low, roaring sound rose beneath the voice, like fire spreading through walls. Dispatchers began coughing. Several reported smelling smoke. Fire alarms triggered, but there was no fire, just the sound, growing louder, until suddenly it stopped. The line went dead. The calls never came again. The abandoned house was demolished weeks later. During cleanup, workers found something buried beneath the foundation. A melted rotary phone, still warm, still humming faintly. When technicians examined it, they found a message scratched into the casing. "Thank you for answering." Years later, emergency operators still share a quiet rule among themselves. If a call comes in with no sound, from a number that shouldn't exist, you let it ring. Because the last dispatcher who answered swore she heard a familiar voice whisper before the line went dead. Now you know how it feels. The file appeared at 2:41 a.m. No one created it. No one downloaded it. Yet there it was, sitting inside the police department's sealed digital archive, labeled simply Case 000000. The system flagged it as active. That alone was impossible. The archive server was air-gapped, not connected to the internet, used only for cold cases and historical evidence. Nothing new could be added without physical authorization. Yet the file timestamp showed it had been modified, moments earlier. A night technician opened it out. Of curiosity, inside was a single document titled, Summary. The text was brief. Subject is aware. Subject is reading. Subject will continue. The technician laughed nervously, assuming it was a corrupted test file. Then the document refreshed on its own. New lines appeared. Subject appears confused. Subject checking system logs. Subject heart rate elevated. The technician froze. He glanced around the empty monitoring room, then back to the screen. Another line appeared. Subject alone. He stood up. The file updated again. Subject standing. His stomach dropped. He slowly sat back down. The words changed immediately. Subject sitting again. His breath caught in his throat. He unplugged the keyboard. The text kept appearing. Input device removed. That won't help. A cold pressure filled the room like air being pulled inward. The technician backed away from the desk. The file refreshed once more. Subject attempting to leave. The exit door behind him clicked, locked, the lights dimmed, the monitor flickered. Then a new section appeared in the file, case history. Lines began populating rapidly. Dates, names, descriptions, missing persons, unsolved deaths, cold cases stretching back decades. Each entry ended with the same note: status archived. At the bottom, a new entry appeared: name redacted, status in progress. The technician whispered, "What is this?" The screen responded, "You're reading it." A sound came from behind the walls, a soft tapping, like fingers brushing metal, slow, intentional. The system speakers crackled to life. A voice spoke, layered and distorted, as if many voices were speaking at once. "We record what is forgotten." The file scrolled on its own. Photos appeared, blurry surveillance frames, distorted faces, empty rooms. Some looked disturbingly familiar. The technician recognized one. It was him, captured seconds earlier by the ceiling camera. The image updated in real time. He turned toward the camera. The image on screen smiled. He did not. The file updated again. Subject acknowledges recording. Subject ready for archival. The tapping grew louder, closer, from inside the walls, from beneath the floor. The technician slammed his hands on the desk. "Stop!" The lights went out. Emergency power failed. Only the monitor remained on, bright, waiting. New text appeared, slower this time. "You will be remembered. You will be stored. You will not be lost." A low hum filled the room. The camera feed froze, then cut. When morning staff arrived, the control room was empty. No sign of the technician, no struggle, no blood. Only the computer remained on. The file case 000000 was open. A new entry had been added. Name redacted. Time, 2:41. Status, archived. IT tried to delete the file. It reappeared. They tried wiping the drive. It returned. They disconnected the system entirely. Days later, the file appeared on another computer. Then another, always named the same. Always updating. Always watching. The department eventually sealed the server room and cut all power permanently. But sometimes, late at night, security cameras in nearby buildings flicker, screens flash white, and for a brief moment, a familiar folder icon appears. If someone clicks it by mistake, the file opens instantly, and a new line begins to type itself. Subject detected. Reading confirmed. Archiving in progress.